我上次上课的时候有咳嗽哈，现在又过了3个礼拜，还是在咳嗽，不过比以前好多了。希望今天不会咳太多 ，OK？ 这个好像就是普通的感冒，也不是 COVID， 因为我 test 了好几次都是 negative。首先我就说，this class is held every month on the first and the third Wednesday of the month. And it's live streamed right now. And you can also go on YouTube later anytime to watch it. I'd like to mention one thing that's not related to this class. It is about my travel talk on July 23rd. It is now rescheduled for July 9th. That is the coming Saturday at 10 a.m. at this same Zoom room. So if you plan to watch it on the 23rd, now you should watch it on the 9th instead. Okay. So these are today's topics. There's a very popular song. I think probably everybody has heard of this song and maybe is able to sing it as well. And this is called the Tennessee Waltz. It's about a girl who took her best friend to a dance and introduced her to her boyfriend, and then that girl stole her boyfriend, her boyfriend away, okay? And I matched it with the Han, 班婕妤, the 班婕妤 is a concubine in the court, the emperor's, one of the emperor's many concubines, and her first name is Ban, and she is a great aunt of Ban Chao, Ban Zhao, Ban Gu. Okay, so they were all related, but she was a pretty girl when she was young, probably before any of those people I just mentioned were born. And this is about her losing her love, who was the emperor, to some other new girls. And the other new girls are the Zhao Feiyan and her sister. They are very famous, pretty girls that they were favored by the emperor, and the Ban Jieyu, being the previously favored concubine, wrote this song, which we don't know if it's authentic. Maybe somebody assumed her identity, tells a story from her perspective about the sad fact that she lost her boyfriend, okay? And we're going to talk about some other things, including the vocabulary, but the other things include Ibsen's statue in Bergen, Citizen Kane, and French Revolution. These are pretty interesting things to talk about. And this is a list of vocabulary. I hope you already got a copy of them, and you can have it next to you so you can go back to it from time to time. One way for you to get a copy is to join the line group of King On, or to be put on the mailing list that I send out this handout every 2 weeks. And you can also send me an email. I think I have my email here. Yeah, here's my email address. You can send an email to that address, and I will be able to add you to my mailing list. And there's another thing I want to talk about, because I talked to Wu Qi, who was watching Ibsen's very, very famous play called Hedda Gabler, and there are at least 3 versions of that play, and one of them is probably the most famous one, I would say one of the two famous ones, was the title character was played by Glenda Jackson. And the thing I want to talk to you about is on the lower right corner, there is an icon that says CC. Last time when we were watching the movie, I mentioned that CC means closed captioning. And I was able to watch this movie by clicking on that automatically generated caption. So it helps a little bit. But Uchi told me that when she was watching it on YouTube, that CC was dimmed and she was not able to click on it. And I find that very strange. However, she also watched another version of Hedda Gabler, and it was by Ingrid Bergman. And I also watched that, and I also watched that with closed captioning. However, she could not find that closed captioning. So, and this morning when I happened to be turning that on, I could not find that CC captioning. So it is a mystery to me, but in fact, it is very true that sometimes you can watch a movie on YouTube and clicking on the closed captioning, and with the help of the artificial intelligence, you could watch the movie knowing more things than you could by yourself deciphering. So this is just something that I find very curious, but apparently it's true. So maybe if you don't see the captioning, you can come back on another day and it may appear. I don't know. It's just something I want to mention to you. Okay. Now here's Ibsen in the portrait. By the time before he died, photography was already invented. Photography was invented way before movies, and the movies were invented by Thomas Alva Edison, 爱迪生哈, over 100 years ago, like 1890 something. And photography was invented much earlier than that. So you could see like Cixi Taihou and the people during that time having their real photographs taken. And this is a very nice picture of Ibsen. He died in 1906, so he had the pleasure of having his portrait taken by probably a good photographer from the look of this. And last time I was saying that there were statues of Ibsen in many places in Norway, which was his native country. And my sister mentioned that there was a statue of Ibsen somewhere. I think Bergen, yeah, I think you said Bergen. And I said, yeah, there is also a statue of him in Oslo. And both of them were in front of the respective national theater in that town. Oslo is the capital of Norway, and it used to be called the Christiana. And if you watch some of the older movies, you would have heard that they mention their capital as being Christiana. For example, Ingrid Bergman's movies and Ingmar Bergman's movies and some others that I've seen them mentioning Christiana. Right. But now when you go to Oslo, there is a district called the Christiana, and it is a hippies district. Okay. what I'm straight. I should come back to Ibsen. So there are statues of him, I'm sure more than 2 of them. However, this one is here, Ibsen, in front of National Theater in Oslo. It's very respectable, very serious, and looks like he's a very knowledgeable person and smart and so on. However, if you go to Bergen, which is on the west coast, it's probably the 2nd largest city in Norway. On this map, you can see here, this very slim strip of land is Norway. It's almost a teardrop shaped because this end is very big, while on the top it's very slender. That is Norway. And if you took at the teardrop, took a look at the teardrop, you will be able to see Oslo here and Bergen here. So these 2 cities are quite far apart with a huge mountain in between. So if you want to take a train or a bus from one place to another, you will be crossing desolate mountains. And Bergen is a very lively port city, and they do have a national theater, and this is their statue of Ibsen in front of Bergen's National Theater, and it looked awful, or it looked surprisingly lively. I remember my tour guide, upon showing us this statue, she said, it looks like he just had a fight with his wife. That's how amazing that statue looks like. Okay, so these are, well, this one, I'm sorry, I didn't mention. Yeah, on the right, this is the same statue as the next one, which is in the evening. Yeah, I did walk around here and look at it in amazement. And last time I also mentioned the Liu Xin and Liu Xiang. Liu Xiang is the father and Liu Xin is the son. And they were very respected scholars in the time of Han Wu Di, okay? And between the 2 of them, they wrote many interesting books that came down for us to read, such as 列女传 and 春秋繁露. However, one of the things I want to talk about is Liu Xin. He edited the book his father did, which is called 七略. And this 七略 was entirely incorporated into 班固的汉书. Hanshu is a history of Western Han Dynasty. And it includes one big book called 艺文志, 汉书艺文志. It was taken from 七略, which was done by Liu Xiang and Liu Xin. And this 艺文志 is extraordinary in my view because it listed all the existing books they could find. This is a monumental job to do, and it's very important. And in Han Wu Di's time, it was like in the 1st century BC. That's a very, very long time ago, and they have this insight of working on this kind of anthology, not an anthology, it's just a list of books, existing books. And one of the important things about this book is it named 九流十家, which is a list of all the philosophers of 春秋, spring and autumn period. Because of them, we Chinese got to learn about the pre-Qing dynasty philosophers of Chinese history. And they are called the 九流十家. So this is a very important thing. And you compare that with this book, which is Books in Print. This is a book originally started in 1868 in this country. So throughout the history of the entire Western Europe, nobody ever bothered to compile a list of books until those people came to the United States. And after 100 years, somebody decided that a list of all books in print is an important job to do. And at that time, it was not a book. They just have a magazine adding different lists every month. And this list grow and grow. And this publisher changed hands many times. And right now it is called the Bowker's Books in Print. And it's part of the Oxford University Press, I think. But the important thing is, you may think the Western civilization is great in so many different ways, but they did not think about compiling a list of all the books in print until very late in 19th century. So it's just 150 years ago. While in China, the first person who took on that big job was 2,000 years ago. That's how much difference there is between the East and the West civilization. I think we should all be very proud of Liu Xiang and Liu Xin and Ban Gu for doing their monumental job that put Chinese civilization on the map in one single respect. Okay, so that's it. Then I mentioned a movie called Mank. And here is Amanda Seyfried. I think it's pronounced Seyfried. I wouldn't know unless I Googled for it. And I do that just about every day. I just Google for pronunciation of certain things. And usually the thing that pop up is on YouTube. So there are many people who diligently telling us how to pronounce all kinds of different words, whether it's current, contemporary, or ancient names and places and all kinds of things. And sometimes they don't agree. So you have to decide for yourself which one to go with, or just to understand that there are more than one way to pronounce a thing. So this pretty young girl is Amanda Seyfried, and she was in 3 very famous movies, and she did quite well. One is that she played Sophie, who is the bride in Mamma Mia. And Mamma Mia is a very weird movie that every time I traveled to a different country and I was on the subway staircase, and there would be Mamma Mia as a theater, a musical in a theater in that city. It's just about everywhere they are showing that play. But this one I'm talking about is a movie. They made that into a movie finally in 2008, many years after the musical was made. And it's got Meryl Streep as the mother, and Amanda Seyfried plays the daughter who was getting married, and she wrote 3 letters secretly to her mother's 3 boyfriends at the time, because she secretly read the mother's diary about 9 months before she was born, and she would like to find out which one was her father. That's a very cute story. And she was Cosette in Les Miserables, and this is where I mentioned her last time because we mentioned the musical, which Les Miserables, which was made into a movie, and Hathaway. What's her first name? Does anybody remember? Anne Hathaway. Anne Hathaway. It's the same name as Shakespeare's wife. I think it's cute that she would. I bet it's not her original name, but she was called Anne Hathaway, and we chose her song last time. That was in Les Miserables, and of course, Anne Hathaway played Fantine, who was the mother of Cosette, and she died miserably. I mean, the mother died miserably after giving birth to a baby out of wedlock. That is, she was not married to the boyfriend, and she could not afford to raise the child, and she was selling her teeth, real teeth, in her mouth. And the dentist would pull her teeth and would pay her a small fee, and she would be able to pay the innkeeper for watching the baby for her. And this Amanda was playing this baby after she became a beautiful young girl, and was the adopted daughter of the protagonist in that story, who was Jean Valjean. Okay, as I was checking Google for the pronunciation of Jean Valjean, I found two different pronunciations. One says Jean Valjean, and the other says Jean Valjean. I'm sure Jean Valjean is correct because it's a French name, but the person who said it should be called Jean is anglicized. Anyway, so that's Cosette. And the third role that Amanda played was Marion Davis in Mank. And she, among all the big shots in the same movie, she was nominated for an Oscar. So she has made it, I suppose. And this movie called Mank is a story about Herman Mankiewicz, who co-wrote the script for Citizen Kane. That movie, Mank, was about this writer who is an alcoholic. He drinks cases and cases of wine in this movie, and he actually died fairly young, in his probably 54 or something. So he did not fare well. His health is pretty much a wreck. And the reason I want to tell you about him is because of the movie Citizen Kane. It's an extraordinary movie. If you have never watched this movie, make sure you go to, say, Netflix or to your library. Any place you can rent a movie, you can find a Citizen Kane. There is not an exception, because this is the greatest movie in history. It was nominated for 10 Oscars. We're talking about the movie Mank, okay? And Citizen Kane was also nominated for many movies, but the movie was portraying the big shot William Randall Hurst, the newspaper tycoon. And Mr. Hurst was very, very angry. So he made a great effort shutting down this movie so that no one would go to see this movie. And that's why in the beginning, it was not a huge hit. But after decades and decades, it consistently was listed as #1 on anybody's list of best movies. So there's no dispute that Citizen Kane was one great movie. If you have never heard of it, make sure that you watch it. And be careful when you watch it, because Orson Welles made that when he was 26 years old, and he broke throw the book, all the tradition, all the rules about movie making. He broke the rules, and he made this movie that every director ever since learned from him. And this is just extraordinary thing to tell you about. And in this new movie, recent movie, 2020 movie called Mank, it starred Gary Oldman in the title role. That means Herman Mankiewicz. And Tom Burke plays Orson Welles. And he, often when he was drunk, he was put into a hotel room by Orson Welles, and Orson Welles delivered him everything that he needs and give him a deadline that he should finish this. And this movie is about how he wrote this script. And Citizen Kane was a movie made in 1941. It was produced, directed, and it starred by Orson Welles. Okay, produced by, directed by, and starring Orson Welles. He also co-wrote the screenplay with Herman J. Mankiewicz, and the two of them won an Oscar for this script. This was Orson Welles' first movie. He has never directed a movie in his life before, and he was 26. And everybody said, you should not do this thing and you should not do that thing. He said, I don't know. I'm just a new person in this business. I can do anything I want. If you look carefully how he edited those pieces, how to splice them together, how to put the camera in what angle. For example, this man is a big towering person. He would put the camera down below and looking up. So it gives you the feeling that he is a giant and very controlling and overbearing and so on. And you could see him somehow putting a camera, taking a scene with many hundreds of mirrors reflecting this character. All these wonderful things that other people after him tried to imitate. He was the first one to invent those things. And for 50 years, it stood at #1 in the British Film Institute's Sight and Sound decennial poll of critics. So there is an agency called the British Film Institute. It's just the counterpart of American Film Institute. American Film Institute also put out a list of best movies and all kinds of lists, best comedy, best suspense, best leading man, and so on, all kinds of lists. And the British Film Institute for 50 years consistently listed this movie as #1. And American Film Institute, they made their list of 100 movies, the best movies, in 1998. And they updated in 2007. And Orson Welles' Citizen Kane was on top, #1 of the, or maybe not one, but this movie was on top of the list. And this story is about William Randall Hurst, who is the owner of the Hurst company, or he owns a big chain of newspapers. So in just about every big city in America, there was a newspaper belonging to his newspaper chain. And we used to have Post Intelligencer in Seattle, but it died when internet became popular, and that was owned by the Hearst company. So now we only have one big local company called the Seattle Times, and this is a left-leaning, progressive kind of newspaper, while William Randall Hearst was a conservative, you may say, on the side of Trump, but during his life, Trump was not born yet. So he was a Republican. And he was so powerful. Whatever he says, nobody dare say no to him. And when Orson Welles made this movie, he was very, very angry because it did not put a good light on his life. He was overbearing, he was powerful, and he was doing things, insisting on doing things his own way. And he came from a very poor family and so on, and he was not happy. So ever since he found out this movie was going to be shown, he did his best to make all the newspapers under him and all the movie theaters and the movie critics, he pulled all the strings possible to prevent this movie from being watched by the general public. So Orson Welles was all downhill from this. His first movie was very best movie, and after that, Hurst tried his best to make his life miserable. Okay, so Hurst prohibited the movie from being mentioned in his newspaper. And this is a picture of a Herman Mankiewicz, and his name is pronounced Mankiewicz. I used to pronounce it Mankiewicz. And you can tell that he was Polish, okay? There are several ways to tell who was from Poland by looking at his last name, and Mankiewicz was one of them. And one way is to see if his name has an L in it with a little slash in the middle. And that is a letter called the W, and that's a Polish letter alone. So if you see a person with a L in his name with a little slash on it, then that's a Polish person. And we have an opera star, I forgot his name, Piotr, which means Peter, something with an L in it, okay? And he is a very capable writer. He, in addition to writing Citizen Kane, Herman also wrote or was involved in the script of Wizard of Oz, 绿野仙踪, Man of the World, Dinner at 8, Pride of the Yankee, about the Lou Gehrig's biography, and The Pride of St. Louis. That was a biography of Charles Lindbergh, the person who first flew single engine across the Atlantic Ocean. And Lou Gehrig, The Pride of the Yankees was about Lou Gehrig, and now we used his name for the disease that he was inflicted with, and it's called ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, also called the Lou Gehrig's disease. He's a Yankee baseball player. Some people think that he was greater than Babe Ruth, but he did not live that long. And another person who had Lou Gehrig's disease but lived a very, very long life was Stephen Hawking. So this becomes a famous disease to have. And I also mentioned that Herman Mankiewicz has had a younger brother, quite a few years younger. So that was 1897, 12 years younger than Herman was Joseph Mankiewicz. He is just as brilliant, or if not more. Sorry about that. I don't know how to turn that off because it's a new phone. Anyway, that's just a notification on my phone. Joseph is not only a screenwriter, he was also a movie director, and he has won both Academy Awards for Best Director and the Best Screenplay. And he did that for two movies back to back, 1949, A Letter to Three Wives, and All About Eve, 1950. All About Eve is another movie that should be on your bucket list because it is one of the greatest movies ever made, with Bette Davis and who was that girl who was in the 10 Amendments as Queen Nefertari? I forgot for now, but I knew her name. Okay, she is excellent. Of course, Bette Davis was excellent too. So this Joseph Mankiewicz is a great director and a great playwright. He also was involved in some other Academy worthy movies. One is the Philadelphia Story, which had Katharine Hepburn and the Cary Grant, which was later made into somewhat of a musical with the High Society, I guess, with Bing Crosby and that princess of
Grace Kelly.
Grace Kelly, yes. Okay, that was a remake, which is a new musical of Philadelphia Story. And there's also Woman of the Year, in which Joseph had the honor of introducing Katharine Hepburn to Spencer Tracy. Together, Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy made many, many famous movies because they are very witty, and they were comedies. They were great playing comedy against each other. They were just a wonderful couple. Okay, that's my part about Citizen Kane, okay? And the next word simply is somber. So somber is something serious, but with a dark feeling. So for example, at a funeral, you should appear somber and not frivolous. Frivolous would be too lighthearted. Okay, I lost my place to write anyway. And toggle is 开关或者叫切换 when you have a switch, a light switch or appliance switch or computer switch for that matter, you can toggle it to turn it on or off. In the old days, you toggle it up or toggle it down. And now on the computer or on some other things like a microwave oven, you can just hit the switch on and hit the switch off. It's the same button. There is no position, no different positions. It's a toggle. So toggle can also mean the action of doing it back and forth. Here is a word about pyre, which I mentioned when we talk about Joan of Arc, 圣女贞德, She was tried as and convicted as a witch. So she was burned on the pyre in Rouen, France. I was there and took some picture of that church. And in the churchyard, there is a little sign that says, Joan of Arc died on the pyre here. Okay, so this pyre is about a funeral fire, a bonfire, but it's for a religious or a funeral ceremony. And it's usually made of wood, and it's used to burn a body either alive or dead. So if it's a funeral, for example, in India, if you have the money or you are important and powerful, when you died within 9 hours, your body should be shipped to Varanasi, okay, and to be burned on the pile of wood. And in that case, it is real wood burning with a dead body on it. But in the case of Joan of Arc, she was alive. She was tied to a stake when she was alive, and the firewood would be surrounding her at the bottom of the stake, and she would die, burned to death on the stake. Those people who were convicted as witches in the Salem witch trials, they were burned alive because they think that the witches are very magical and powerful. If you just kill the witches the regular way, then they will wreak havoc. That means to create a huge disaster, a calamity. So if you kill a witch instead of burning it dead alive when you're alive, then the spirit of this witch, the strong, powerful witch, would be able to make your life miserable. So wreak havoc is create a great catastrophe on other people. We can say a hurricane or an earthquake wreaked havoc on a town or a city. And a witch is supposed to be able to do that if you don't kill her the right way. And there is a famous play by Arthur Miller called The Crucible. I just watched it recently with Daniel Day-Lewis and the Winona Ryder and June something. Anyway, The Good Wife. So if you want to read about the Salem witch trial, that would be a place to start. An easy way is to go on YouTube and watch The Crucible for free. As a form of cremation, a body is placed upon the pyre, which is then set on fire. So this is a funeral instead of an execution. And in this picture, it's a very old painting from Western Europe. They used to do that to witches. Let me see. Yeah, looks like it's an execution instead of a funeral. However, in other religions, for example, in this picture, which was taken in Laos, they would conduct a funeral by piling wood and put probably a Buddhist monk on top of the pyre and light the fire and cremate. Here's the word cremate. As a form of cremation, that is 火葬，把人的骨头肉骨烧成灰叫的 cremation. And if you go to a Nazi concentration camp, you will be able to see a room which is called the crematorium with several ovens that they burn people, dead people there. They would gas them to death with the insecticide and then burn them for days on end. People who live around the concentration camp would be really bothered with the very bad air pollution. The next thing I want to talk about is French resistance. This is because I was talking about Anne Frank, the diary of Anne Frank. They were helped by several people, and there were Dutch resistance, and the most famous resistance in World War II was French resistance, and if you say in their language is la résistance. So it is how you say French resistance. Every country that was occupied by Nazi Germany had resistance in action. I've been to several museums in Denmark, Copenhagen, or you can go to other Scandinavian countries, and the France and the Netherlands and Belgium, they all had the resistance, but France being probably the largest country under Nazi occupation, they had the strongest organization of la resistance. So these people fought the Nazi occupation, not only just the Nazi, but also those French people who helped the Nazi, which means the French people who corroborated with Nazi and trampled on their own citizens. So the resistance would fight against both of them. And the collaborators, we call them Vichy regime, 维齐政权, 就是 after Nazi occupied France, they set up a puppet regime called the Vichy regime. And our counterpart in China, we also had resistance, and every places under Japanese occupation, we had Chinese resistance. And we had also a collaborator regime, which was Wang Jingwei. The Japanese, after they took over a large chunk of China, they set up pretty early by getting Wang Jingwei to head this puppet regime. And what do? They would work in small groups, and we call them cells. Nowadays, the terrorists also work in cells, which means they're small and they are secret, and they try to not let people know, so they're called cells. Cells are 细胞, 或者说地牢. So these people, they work in small groups, and they are armed men and women. In addition to their guerrilla warfare activities, they also they publish leaflets to send around to get people to know what's happening and what they wish to be done. And they would provide intelligence to, for example, French resistance, they would provide intelligence to the British government or to the United States government to help them to fight against Nazi. And when the British or American soldiers or airmen were shut down or or during invasion or warfare were captured by Nazis, then this resistance would help them to escape. Okay, these are the things they usually do, and especially after the invasion of Normandy on June 6th, 6月6日断肠时, the French resistance helped them a great deal to assist the Allies to rapidly advance through France. And even after the war, even after World War II, French people are immensely proud of what they did during those resistance times. It symbolized their patriotic spirit, and it's the pride of their nationhood. And the next thing I want to talk about is French Revolution. This is a much bigger topic and quite dry. I'm going to try to say it as quickly as possible. The point is, when we read Les Miserables, or when we watched the movie or musical of Les Miserables, which was translated into 悲惨世界, and we always were told that's a story about French Revolution. However, it was a story about people in France, about a certain few people there and their lives in 1815 to 1832, which is outside the definition of French Revolution. That's what prompted me to tell you something about French Revolution, because according to the historians, they define French Revolution as being the period between 1789 to 1799, which is only 10 years. And we all know 1789 was on July 14th. That was the Bastille Day, because some rioters broke into the prison that was called the Bastille, 八士底宫监狱, and tried to free some of the prisoners there. And as it turns out, there were only a handful of prisoners there, and it was not a big event, but in hindsight, people realized that was the day the revolution started. And if you look at Louis XVI's diary, and you'll be surprised to find that his entry on that day was really, really simple. It was only one sentence that says, "Nothing happened today." So people did not know on that day that a revolution has happened, but it did happen, and it did happen because of a long simmering resentment and the hatred and the bad relations between the people and the ruling class. So technically, we define the revolution as being the day they start the revolution, as the Estates General was convened. And the ending day was 1799, was the day that they established French consulate instead of the Estate General. So it's two meetings as a bookcase on both ends that defined the revolution. But actually, the country was still chaotic and all kinds of things happening. And this story of Les Miserables was happening 10, 20, 30 years after the so-called revolution ended. So that is what the point I wanted to make. Well, at that time, there was a General Assembly with three classes of people. The first estate, the clergies, the second estate, the nobility, and the third estate, the commoners. So the three parts were supposed to have a meeting more or less regularly. And on that day, it was supposed to be that meeting. However, pretty soon, the third estate, which is the commoner, the regular people, took over the meeting and invited the other two estates to be part of the meeting. And they opened a new meeting with a different name. Okay, so that was the National Assembly that started the revolution. And I really don't want to look at it too much. And when this period ended in 1799, it was that General Council that was put in place. And in the quick few years, Napoleon became the absolute leader or authoritarian emperor of this country. And the revolution definitely is dead because it becomes Napoleon as the emperor. And after that, he became the military dictator. So the revolution is gone. But when Victor Hugo wrote the story Les Miserables, it was much later than the revolution, but it's still part of the entire movement, even though there was no more revolution. And it's very, very important. A few years before that, we had the United States Independence War, and it was heavily influenced by the French philosophers that I mentioned the last time, those philosophers of the age of enlightenment. They preach that every people is equal and free. So their French slogan is liberty, equality, and fraternity. And in French words, they rhyme as if in a poem. So it's a liberté, égalité, and the fraternité. Okay, and that T-E is T. That's just a noun. Okay. Again and again after the French Revolution, I don't know, maybe I should turn this voice down. I can't. Okay, maybe I'll hide it somewhere. Smother it with a pillow. Okay, so ever since then, for example, the Russian Revolution, they also used a similar slogan. And when people wanted to abolish slavery, or when women wanted to have vote, they all tried to hijack the slogan as their goals. So France is ahead of the game in the world by naming these three important human rights as the goal of an ideal government. And just about every country that went through revolution since then and before that all followed the same goals. Okay, so the storming of Bastille. Bastille was a prison inside Paris. However, it is no longer there. When you take the subway, there is a station called Bastille, but there is a brand new opera house there and no prison there. And there was the farmers market probably every day. It's a very lively place, but no longer a prison now. And this is still about after the revolution. That was Napoleon who became the emperor, and then he failed, and then we had well, there was the first republic in 1792, followed by this Napoleon thing, which was the first monarch. Okay, let me see. During the real period of French Revolution, you had the Reign of Terror, in which Robespierre was the leader of the mob. Okay, and he himself was executed by the guillotine. Guillotine meaning 断头台, huh? Guillotine was named after the doctor who invented this very clean and painless way to die. And I think he was guillotined later himself. Anyway, the reign of terror, tens of thousands of people died during the reign of terror. And people got so tired of this thing, huh? And this movie was actually about 1815 to 1832, and it's about Jean Valjean. Okay, that is the name of the ex-convict who escaped from prison, and he was in the prison for 19 years for stealing a loaf of bread for his starving sister and nephews. That just shows what a miserable time it was. Okay. So after Napoleon, there was a second republic, and then a second empire, and then the third republic, and so on. And Charles de Gaulle was the leader in the fifth republic in France. So there were 5 of them, spaced with 5 monarchies. One of them was Napoleon's nephew. This is just to name 3 things. I was embarrassed last time when I could not name all 3 things. This is 二次多项方程式, the second degree polynomial formula. Ellipse is 椭圆, and the parabola is 抛物线, and hyperbola is 双曲线. All these lines which are not straight lines. A straight line is 1 degree. 一次方程式 is a line. And 二次才会有 curve. And these curves are all conic sections of, you have a cone, okay, there's a cone, a 圆锥形, and you cut it in different ways, a section, just cut into different ways. And this is a circle, and this is an ellipse. And this slanted one with the bottom there is a parabola, and the straight down one is a hyperbola. And there is usually a focus or 2 co-focus, foci. Focus, the plural of focus is foci, F-O-C-I. And for ellipse, there are 2 foci. And with the parabola, you have a focus here. You can see in the picture. And with the 双曲线, you have different things. Of course, we are in this age, we no longer deal with these things ever, so you don't have to learn them. But maybe you want to teach your grandchild someday. Here's the word like Leviathan, which is the name of a sea monster. Leviathan, 海怪. So some people, Chinese people, translate it into kun. Kun is a huge fish, but this monster is usually painted as some kind of a dragon or a snake, as in this picture. It is more like a fancy snake with claws and a fancy head. That's a leviathan. And it appeared repeatedly in many of the books of the Hebrew Bible. The Hebrew Bible was written 500 years BC, and it was an oral history way before that. There was no book before 500 BC. It was only when the Israeli people were captured or lost the battle, defeated by the Babylonian Empire, that they started to write down their Hebrew Bible. And the part of the Hebrew Bible was adopted by Christianity to become the Old Testament. So it's not exactly the same, because the Christian Bible was sanctioned by the Roman Catholic Church, and then with some alteration later. But the Hebrew Bible happened way before that. So they're not exactly the same. And there are more books in the Hebrew Bible mentioning Leviathan than you can find in the Old Testament. And if you open the book of Zhuangzi, the first chapter is 逍遥游, and the first sentence was 北冥有鱼，其名为鲲. It says in the northern polar region, Ming means hazy and unclear. In the far north, in the muddled place, there was a fish. Its name was Kun, and Kun 之大，不知其几千里. So this fish is very big. So a Chinese reading the Bible and saw the word Leviathan, he was inspired to translate that into Kun. However, in Leviathan, you see a monster that could wreak havoc. It could do lots of bad things in the sea, including capsizing big boat and so on. However, 庄子逍遥游的鲲, it's just a huge fish. It does not do any evil things. It's just so extraordinarily huge that it's a monster. And if you read more of it, it says 化而为鸟，其名为鹏。鹏之背，不知其几千里也。怒而飞，其翼若垂天之云。This is the very first line of 庄子逍遥游, as if when you read the 论语, you say 颜渊记录事，子曰何各言而至. Everybody who started to read the 论语 would know those lines, even though they were not better in any way than other lines, but everyone knows it. And the 庄子逍遥游, 北冥有鱼, has the same distinct honor for being in the first line of a very famous book. And when I checked its translation, as somebody would translate into 利维坦 or 巨灵 or 鳄鱼 or 海怪 or 鲲. And some would translate into an English word, which may have other sources than English. It's called the kraken. And when I look at kraken, boy, it dawned on me, I did not know this word. It means a sea monster. So do you know why I'm so excited about it? Because I pass by it on a daily basis. The kraken is a legendary sea monster of enormous size, said to appear off the coast of Norway. But so what does it look like? We don't know. In that picture on the right, it looks like some kind of octopus. And we know octopus can be huge. People have found huge octopus near the sea in Australia. But what about the word kraken? Have you seen this logo on the right, which is an S? Seattle Kraken is the hockey team. A new hockey team of Seattle is called Kraken because we love the sea. We have Mariner as a baseball team, and we have Seahawks as a football team. And now we chose Kraken as the hockey team. It's a brand new hockey team that participated in 2021, the first time in the league. And they belong to the National Hockey League in the Western Conference. Just like in all other sports games, there is a National League with two subgroups, Eastern, Western, I guess so. So they play their home games at Climate Pledge Arena. I've never heard of this. I am so out of date because here is where they played that first game in Seattle Center. Has anybody been there? I haven't. I haven't seen this building in my life until the last few days, okay? But I just said I pass by this place every day. This is Northgate Mall. It's now called Kraken Community Iceplex. They tore down half of Northgate Mall and built 3 practicing ice skating rinks. So it's an iceplex with 3 rinks, and it is the training location of the Kraken team. When Seattle first applied and got to have a team of hockey game, one of the condition was they have to have a 3 iceplex location for the training of the hockey players. So I wonder if any of you know this, but this is a place I pass by every day if I go out. I could walk there, and it's called the Kraken. I've seen this name many times. I did not know what it means. Now I know. Okay. That's the next one, Pantheon. Pantheon, pan means multi, several, many. For example, Pan America was an airline, and the Pan Pacific Highway was a highway from Vancouver, Canada, all the way to Chile, all the way except for one tiny section in Panama or something. So that's our I-5 that is called the Pan Pacific Highway. Here's the word Pan, and the Theon means gods. So 万神庙, which means all the gods in this religion, in a multi or a pantheon. Let me see, where is that word? I don't know. It's called the anyway, it's called the Pantheon. It's the temple of many gods. So if it's a Greek pantheon, it has many gods from the Greek mythology. And if it's a Hindu pantheon, then it would have lots of Hindu gods. And it better be big because there are 23 million of Hindu gods, okay? You can only choose a few to worship. So you would have Brahman or Vishnu or different Hindu gods, but there are quite a few. But in human history, all the older religions were pantheistism, meaning they, okay, here we have the word. I was looking for this word. Polytheistic religion, which means you have several gods. Theon means gods. Poly means several. Pan means a good many of them. So polytheistic religion, you would have a temple with many gods inside. However, if it's a Christian temple or a Muslim temple, or those that has only one God, then there would be only one God. Even you have Jesus representing God, you may have Maria or St. Michael and so on, but those are not real gods. Only one God, the holy, mighty God. There's only one. That's called the monotheistic. 是一神论 polytheistic is 多神论 So pantheon in Greek language means a temple of all gods. However, when it's not a religious temple, then we call it 先贤祠. That means people who died, but they were wise men. They were capable, knowledgeable, and very wise. So we call it 先贤祠. There is one in Paris. It's not a 万神庙. In the beginning, it was made into a temple, but they could not decide what to do because it was finished after the French Revolution, and the people who started building it already died in the revolution. So for a time they used it as a church. French, it would be it would be Catholic Church. And later on, they decided to make into a pantheon. That's what it's called. So originally, when this pantheon in Rome was built, it was before Christ. The Emperor Agrippa built the temple in 29 to 19 BC. That's before Jesus was born. And later, I think I'm going to take a cough drop. Later on in 126 CE, which is AD, CE means AD, it's Common Era after Christ. AD means after Domino, which means our Lord, our dominator. And the BC means before Christ. And CE means Common Era because this words represents a very commonly used concept. So they don't want too much religious meaning in it. So they changed the words AD and the BC into CE or BCE so that other religions could follow and use the same calendar. And this was a very, very important temple to go to. And if you go to Rome, make sure to go there. It was 2,000 years old and it has a big hole on top. A round hole in the dome that was not reinforced by concrete. And it stood there for 2,000 years. That is a wonderful thing. And of course, when it rains, rain comes down and the center of the temple would be wet. That's a very interesting idea. And this is the Pantheon in Paris. And it's a beautiful building. They could not decide what to do with it. And sometimes it was a church, sometimes it was a mausoleum. And when the year 1881 comes, that was after 100 years after the revolution, and 100 years after this building was built, they decided to use it exclusively as a pantheon for 先贤. So they started to add more coffins inside the display of respected famous people. Before that, they've started to do that with many important religious and political persons coffin in it. And for a long time, they stopped doing that. And in 1881, they decided they should resume doing that. And the first one they put in there was Victor Hugo. And right now, there were 81 people. Some of them we know, but most of them, the older ones, we hardly knew. And they are politicians and scientists, mathematicians, writers, and painters, and singers even. The latest one was Josephine Baker, who was inducted in 2021, which is very close, recent enough. And she was the first Black woman to be there. She was a singer. And of the 81 people there, 6 are women. And notable among them was Marie Curie, Julie Furen. Marie Curie and her husband were both there, but I looked at the other women, I don't know any of them. This is a quick one. 扫烟囱的人, chimney sweeper. I was talking about Mary Poppins, and in that movie, I think everybody has seen it. There was a chimney sweeper. And they made a remake or a sequel to that. And it was an identical story, but just with different people. And the old man who was played by Ed Wynn in the first episode is now played by Meryl Streep as an eccentric woman, old woman. And the chimney sweeper, who was played by Dick Van Dyke, in the new version is played by Lin-Manuel Miranda, who was a maker of Hamilton. And he was in another line of work. I forgot. I don't know. Okay, I just want you to know chimney is the 烟囱. Sweeper is the person who cleans the 烟囱. I've hired a couple chimney sweepers in my life, but not recently because I don't use the chimney, don't use the fireplace anymore. And this one is a word called the dilemma, and all these words I showed you last time have the same meaning, but slightly different. It's always in a difficult situation. You could go this way or that way, but the choice is very difficult to make. So you have a dilemma on your hand. There was a George Bernard Shaw play called The Doctor's Dilemma or something. And the predicament is dilemma. The emphasis is on the difficulty between choosing two things. A predicament is more about a thing that is difficult, not necessarily between two things. And quandary is also about the difficult situation, but not stressing the two sides. All these actually, they are more about the difficult situation than dilemma was about two choices. And the pickle is a slang. You would say, oh, I was in the pickle, which means I don't know what to do. This is very difficult for me to decide. And the catch-22 was used by Joseph Heller in his famous book called Catch-22, in which he described the red tape in World War II military. There are so many rules that are contradicting each other that people just would rather throw in their towel and not make a choice. So it's really very a satire about the military's ineptness in their rules. And later on, that book became a necessary reading when people were in the military. They teach you to read this book to know what the problem is with the military. And it was made into a movie with Alan Arkin, I think. And this is a moat. You just need to learn the word moat, which is 护城河. And there are many beautiful moats in the world. This one is, of course, in Japan. And this one is in Beijing. We have four-corner cupula. And what I want to say is a 角楼, a big palace with four-corner things. You have station soldiers in the corner, so you can look at two different directions. And now I'm going to tackle this big thing, which is called opium. And here I have a picture of opium, poppy flowers. Poppy is, they say, the most beautiful flower in the world. And there are many, many varieties. Only one kind can produce opium. And it is refined from the sap, the juice from the fruits. And there are two related words. Opium is this raw opium itself, usually as a brown paste. And the opiate is probably an adjective, and the opioid is a noun. They were just an umbrella word that include all kinds of opium products. Some of them are like heroin or many others. Some are not even from the plants. They were synthetic, artificially made. Whether it's natural or synthetic, they would do something by binding to the receptors in the brain so that you don't feel the pain, or you become so happy and you feel like you're floating, or things like that. So it could be a analgesic, or it could be an anesthetic. I'll come to those words later. Morphine is a one product that is like a clear colored essence, a refined essence that you can inject, and it can be used for either acute or chronic pain, which means 急性的或者是慢性的. So if you suddenly, for example, you were injured, your head was chopped off halfway, then you have, well, maybe you don't feel it. I would say your hand or arm or legs were chopped off. Then you feel this intense pain, which is acute. And chronic could be you have cancer and you're in pain every day, all time of the day. So that's called the chronic. And this kind of medicine can have a serious side effect, such as decreased respiratory 呼吸减少 and vomiting 就是呕吐和 nausea 也是恶心 low blood pressure, and it can be addictive, and people can abuse, prone to abuse. And once you are addicted to it, it's very difficult to quit, because you will have a withdrawal symptom, which is when you quit something that is addictive, then you feel the pain when you don't get enough of it. And so there are actually three words. One word is called narcotic, one is called analgesic, and one is called anesthetic. 止痛药 is a painkiller, analgesic. Well, anesthesia is 麻醉. When you're going into surgery, you will be put under so you don't feel the pain. That's called anesthetics. No, that's 止痛药. And these are together, they can be called narcotic because it induces the numbness, and it could be addictive and it could be abused. So the branch of the law enforcement could be called the narcotic branch. They deal with drug. They try to catch people who deal with drugs illegally because it's very dangerous. You can die of it or you can be addicted to it. So as a law enforcement agency, they have a special team of people dealing with drug smuggling, SMUGGLE, smuggle 就是走私的意思。Smuggle, it is a substance that people use, however, because it's very dangerous and harmful, so the government would put it under control, and because of the control, it becomes illegal for you to deal with it yourself. So this is the part of the law enforcement that deals with the narcotics. And the word analgesic is 止痛药. So it's pain reliever, analgesic, painkiller. Okay. They are different from the 麻醉药, but sometimes they overlap. The one thing can be used in different ways. And the painkiller can be over the counter, like Doan's pill, or there are many over-the-counter painkillers. Presumably, they are less dangerous, so the government let people to buy it over the counter. However, there are many that are controlled substance. So they are prescription drugs because it could high chances of overdose and misuse and addiction. So you need a doctor to monitor you. Bridge is to, for example, Victor Hugo's book called Les Miserables. It's a very, very big book, but the version I read when I was in middle school was a very thin little book. It was an abridged version of that book. It just tells you the story, nothing about his philosophy, because Mr. Hugo spent pages or dozens of pages on something that is philosophical. When I finally got to read it, I got so bored because it's just pages after page that had nothing to do with our heroes. Okay. But he has such huge influence on people because he really let people know what he feels. And he is for the little people. When he was younger, he was a royalist. He was for the monarchy, but later he changed his mind and he became a Republican. Well, when I say Republican, I mean they believe the government should be ruled by people, not by a few monarchs. He, in his books, he dealt in great deal about for example, the tyranny of law. People say, that is the law, but the law was made by people who were rich and famous. They have influence, so they made the law to make the disenfranchised people suffer. They could be put in jail for various reasons. For example, Jean Valjean was put in jail for 19 years for stealing a loaf of bread. Of course, he tried to escape repeatedly and was caught and was slapped on with more sentence. Anyway, Victor Hugo was very much on the side of poor and disenfranchised. Enfranchised meaning means to be given the rights. Disenfranchised means you were stripped of the rights or you were not given the rights. For example, in the beginning in this country, only rich white men can vote, and everyone else was disenfranchised. And gradually, the French Enlightenment philosophy took hold, and the doors were open to Black and women. Okay, let me go to this song, which is called the Tennessee Waltz. Okay, I should stop share first and start share with this. Now again, I can't find it. It's not this one, not this one, not this one. But I don't know why it's not there. Oh, okay, it's here. That happened to me last time as well. Where it's this one, I'm sure. No, it's not. Patty page. Let me try this. I believe it's this one. Yeah, okay.
I was dancing with my darling to the Tennessee waltz when an old friend I happened to see. I introduced her to my loved one, and while they were dancing, my friend stole my sweetheart from me. I remember the night and the Tennessee waltz. Now I know just how much I have lost. Yes, I lost my little darling the night they were playing the beautiful Tennessee waltz. Dancing with my darling to the Tennessee waltz when an old friend I happened to see. I introduced her to my loved one, and while they were dancing, my friend stole my sweetheart from me. I remember the night and the Tennessee waltz. Now I know just how much I have lost. Yes, I lost my little darling the night they were playing the beautiful Tennessee waltz.
Okay, I believe everybody has heard of this song. Yeah, okay. We're back. And it's a very easy song. There's not a hard word in it or hard sentence, so you can easily read through it and try to sing it along with the music. Since you already knew the music, it's a cinch. But there's one interesting thing about it. The song became a multi-million seller at that time. It was very, very big. For example, it was, as of 1974, it was the biggest selling song ever in Japan. So it's not just in this country, but also in many other countries. And I also, when I was growing up, when I was interested in movies, and sometimes I read the 10 best movies of the year or whatever, and there was a list by Japan that consistently listed Citizen Kane as the #1 movie of that year for many years. But when I was growing up, I never heard of that movie. And this interesting thing is about Patti Page, whose version of this song was the most famous and sold much more than anyone else. And she sings with herself in 4-part harmony, which means that she sings the song in different sections, high and low and a different melody, 4 parts. Then when she did the final recording, there were 5 of her singing that song. See if you could tell, but you certainly can tell there was a chorus of very similar voices. Yeah, last time when we talked about Karen Carpenter, she also tried this gimmick, recording some parts of the harmony herself, then replayed it to the recording. And that is a very attractive way to present a song with wonderful melody and harmony. However, if you are the singer and you go out to do a live concert, that cannot be done. People who are used to the 4-part or 5-part song of your rendering are there, listen to you sing it alone, and they find that somewhat lacking because there's not enough harmony in that. Okay, and this is our Chinese poem by Ban Jieyu. What her name was, we no longer know. My mother's mother, we do not know her name, and my father's mother, we also do not know her name because they were not given a name. They only have the last name from their father. So on our Hukou Mingbu, they were listed as Li Shi or something. That's what women were in the old days. They are not known for their first name because maybe they never had one. So here we have the word 愿歌行 The word 行 means song 歌行 is a song, and 愿歌行 is a sad, complaining song. And in 汉书司马相如传 there was a sentence saying 惟古一在行, and Yan Shigu, who did the annotation, says 行 is like in the old 乐府诗 old court songs, they call it 长歌行, 短歌行. That word 行 means song. 曹操的作品有谢路行、好礼行、苦寒行、不出厦门行、短歌行等等. That word 行 means a song, and 白居易有琵琶行. And later, it's used less. And there was 李白的长干行 So you wonder what that 行 means, but it means song. 新列棋完素，皎洁如霜雪。采薇合欢扇，团团似明月。初入君怀袖，动摇微风发。常恐秋节至，凉风多炎热。弃捐妾寺中，恩情终道绝。So she compares her position with the emperor like a fan, a summer fan, a white silk fan, pure as snow or frost. 裂 means to cut. You have a bolt of fabric and you tear it open. We usually use 裂 that means to cut the fabric. It's a very dramatic word, a verb to describe the action of trying to make things out of a fabric, a silk fabric. 采薇合山涣 she calls the fan a 合欢扇 because it brought you comfort. And the fan is round. The Chinese fan is a round fan, looking like a bright moon when it's full. And the boyfriend, in this case, the emperor, would put this into his long sleeve. His sleeve would have a big pocket where people would put things. It's like pockets. So 出入君怀袖, your sleeve that is like a pocket. 动摇微风发. You go out and come back. It's always on you, and you would wave it so that a light breeze is created. And I, as the fan, I always worried that autumn would come and the cool breeze would take away the heat. And this fan, your boyfriend would throw this fan into a bamboo basket, and the relationship would be severed. Severed 就是中道绝的意思哈，切断的意思哈。And when you read, once I introduced this 陶渊明赋哈，什么情赋？I forgot again. Anyway, he wrote this 10 things I wish I could do. That is, to be your eyebrow, to be your face lotion, to be your rouge on your lipsticks, to be the fan that you use, and so on and so forth. It's very romantic, huh? And it is his yearning to be with his loved one, his girlfriend maybe, and he would never want to leave, and he's always worried that when the situation changes, the girlfriend would toss him away. or when she washes her face, then the cosmetics would be gone and so on. That was a very interesting poem, but it's called A Fool. It's very much, I'm sure Tao Yuanming put that one incident among the 10 because of 班婕妤's 愿歌行, huh? And then we would have 成语叫做秋善见捐, huh? The 见 is a 被动的动词，就是被捐就是丢掉, huh? A fan in autumn was forsaken or abandoned by the owner of the fan because the weather changed and the fan was no longer useful. It is a parable that means a favored girlfriend or concubine or consort lost favor and become no longer a favored consort. Huh? Consort is a company of a royal person. For example, Prince Philip is a consort of Queen Elizabeth II, while Prince Albert is the consort of Queen Victoria. And in the case of not a monogamous relationship, those monarchs would have an army of consorts. In this case, we had 班婕妤. And because of this poem, we have this common saying that once a girl was lost a favor, then it's like a fan in autumn that was abandoned by the owner. The dates of her birth and death were not certain, but she was one of the emperors after Han Wudi. We had Han Gaozu and Han Wenjing Zhi, 然后有 Han Gaozu, and Han Chengdi is a later one, but before Dong Han. Huh? When Bangu came along, he wrote Han Shu, which is the history of Western Han dynasty. So he lived in Eastern Han dynasty, and Ban Jieyu would be Bangu's great-grand aunt, okay? And her father is Ban Kuang, and she was Ban Biao the Gumu, aunt of Ban Biao, and Ban Biao is the father of Ban Gu, Ban Chao, Ban Zhao. So she was the great-grand aunt of all these famous people we know in Han dynasty. So she became, you can say she was drafted into the harem to be one of the girls, and she rises among those girls to become a higher level and then higher level, and eventually became the top level only after the queen herself. So she was called the Jieyu, but there are a number of Jieyu in addition to her. She had given birth to a son and a daughter. They would potentially be eligible to assume the throne, but they both died within a few months of birth. And at that time, she was praised for her beauty and her very good behavior as a lady. There was once the emperor said, oh, come along with me in the carriage for a cruise outside. And she said, no, a sage emperor were accompanied by respected and wise courtiers or officials. And in the Sandai, which means Xiashangzhou, the last emperor of Sandai, they went about with lowly, favorable women in carriages. They went about, and that's how they lost their dynasty. So this advice is considered very, very wise, and was described in many stories for women to learn that you should behave like her. And she recommended one of her maids to the emperor, and that maid, Li Ping, also rises among the other girls and became a concubine. But then along came Zhao Feiyi and Zhao Zhaoyi. They are two sisters, and they became very favorable, and the emperor no longer preferred the queen nor these four concubines. And Zhao Feiyi, being the favored girl, she wrongly accused the queen and Ban Jieyu as conducting some kind of magic, putting a curse on the life of Zhao Feiyi, probably. Then, as in other civilization, there are witches or wizards who could perform curses. They would put a doll with needles in it and say something evil about it. And this doll, which represents the emperor in this case, would slowly get sick and die. And people believe in that. And because of this rumor, this wrong accusation, the queen was she was abandoned or divorced by the emperor. And Ban Jieyu also was severely investigated for this crime. But she, being very good behaving woman and very knowledgeable with a good argument and sage advice, she said that I know the life of a person is destined by God, whether he thrives or becomes poor, those are determined by God. These things are not to be changed by curses. I would never do such a thing because I knew it was not effective. Even if I try to behave well, I may not be able to achieve a good fortune. Then how could I expect some kind of evil trick to bring some good luck for me? If the ghosts or gods knew that, why would they agree to my request? So I am not going to do such a thing. And the emperor was convinced because this argument is very convincing. And the emperor gave her 100 jin of gold. And to avoid being in the palace intrigue fighting, she decided to apply to go to be the maid of the queen mother. And she also wrote this poem, which we assume she wrote it, but many people don't think she did. And after the emperor died, she also went to guard the tomb for a long time. And when she died herself, she was buried near that emperor's tomb, okay? And it seems that there were more than one poem that were written by her, but there was serious doubt about it. This is what I have for today. And I want to remind you that 2 weeks later, we're going to do the movie on YouTube, which is free, called The Pygmalion. And I found 2 totally identical versions of it. So you can just go to YouTube and look for Pygmalion. You will be able to find it. It was from the year 1938. That's the topic we're going to do. And this version is 1 hour and 36 minutes. So it's much shorter than the other movies we've seen. And I hope you have seen My Fair Lady, because it's the same story, same lines, same characters, same story, but the other one is so fancy, lots of props and costumes and so on. But this one is the old version that is very simple. And I believe the 2 or even 4 actors in it are just superb. They are very good. And the last reminding is that my travel talk on July 23rd is now changed to 9th. So it'll be 3 days from today. And we're going to talk about Ethiopia, and it's going to be the last part of it. Okay. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, the 2 words, Joe, that I was on your slides. One is decennial, DECENNIAL. What does that mean?
No, you have an annual thing, which is once a year, and
Right.
you have biennial, which is every 2 years. For example,
Right.
the Berlin Film Festival is a biennial thing, and this one is it'll be busy for people to keep a list of 100 best movies year after year. So they do it every 10 years. So that
Okay.
word is every 10 years.
Okay. The other word that I would like to know how to use it, quasi, QUASI. Some kind of biography, I think, was used in that slides.
Quasi, okay.
Quasi, sorry.
Well, there are many ways. For example, you say multi, some people say multi. So quasi, or you can say quasi. That means partly, half of that is not the real thing. For example,
partly, okay.
Yeah, it's just like pseudo, something that is not the true authentic thing, but it's part. For example, hypnosis. That hypnosis is to 催眠. It's some kind of medical thing, but it's pseudo-scientific. It's not really based on science. Real doctors would dismiss that as not a medical thing.
Okay.
Or something like a philosophy, and you can say something is a pseudo philosophy, meaning that it's not a real traditional good philosophy, but some quackery.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. Blah, 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 blah. One other thing. There's a word that's on your vocabulary list, but I don't think we discussed. Herbaceous.
Herbaceous. Okay. Herbaceous. Yeah, I certainly lost it. Yeah. Herb, herb is
herbal.
香草. Herbal, and herbaceous is a more botanical word. It means 草本, some kind of plant that does not have a woody stalk year after year. For example, you have peony, which is a herb, or herbaceous, and tree peony is not herbaceous. 就是牡丹跟芍药的分别，就是牡丹是一种树，木本的，而 every year it's there. The main branches stays there year after year. However, peony, which is 芍药, every year when winter comes, you don't see it. It's gone. Every part you saw above ground is gone, and next year it'll grow totally new.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
Interesting. 好，谢谢。
It won't come back. 芍药 won't come back.
Oh, yes. It does come back. It's a perennial. Huh? There are things that are called woody and herbaceous. That is 草本或者木本. While there are things called the perennial, which is 多年生 or annual or biennial. Huh? Something they're gone after blooming. For example, petunia or balsam, or lots of 1-year-old things you have to go to store to buy every year because they're gone the next year. However, 芍药 is a 草本, or is herbaceous, but it is a perennial. Perennial means it comes back year after year, but not the same plant, the body part. You don't see that anymore, but the roots are in the soil and it grows new plants every year. So you have the word called the perennial and versus annual, and you have herbaceous versus woody. I could not find a better word for woody, a more scientific word, but they all say woody. So in Chinese we say 草本木本, 多年生, 一年生, and there are 2年生的. So for example, you have fava beans. You plant the seeds before winter, and next year it'll grow fava beans, 蚕豆, and then it's gone. You don't get another crop next year. So it's a 2-year thing. So that's called the biennial. I guess I can try to spell it biennial. Probably like that, yeah. But for example, Cannes Film Festival, 就是坎城影展, it's every year, annual 影展. But Berlin biennial, I think they call it biennial. It's a German word. Anyway, so biennial means that every 2 years. Yeah, sometimes it's too much work to do it every year.
Oh, I have a question here.
Yes.
This Tennessee waltz. I was dancing with my darling to the Tennessee waltz. So is there a piece of music called Tennessee waltz they can dance with? Or this is a song?
I don't think so. I don't think so. You can Google it. I saw people asking, is there such a song? It seems to be no.
Okay.
This song, I think it's now is, I don't know, it's officially, unofficially, but it's a Tennessee state song.
Yes, I read that it is the 5th or 4th official state song of Tennessee.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so there must be more before
The
that.
others.
Yeah, and I think this
about like Blue Danube or something. Words they can dance.
Yeah, there's a song called The Land of Enchantment, New Mexico, and it became New Mexico's state song. That is also a set song, but this one is downright murderous. I don't think it's good as a stage song because it's a tragedy.
Okay.
Yeah.
There were some songs like Swanee River by Stephen Foster. It became the stage song of, I don't know, Georgia or I don't know, some of the southern states. And of course, you remember that West Virginia, how do you call that? John Denver's song.
Yeah.
Yeah, that became a West Virginia song.
Yeah. Right.
But when you read about it, he didn't mean West Virginia at all. He just need a word that's very long and all the states don't qualify. So he had to use West Virginia because it's long enough. And the Stephen Foster song about Swanee River, there was no such a river, but he just wanted this many syllables for that song. So he chose that song, which did not exist there actually.
Okay.
Okay, so we will do the Pygmalion 2 weeks from now, and I'll do the travel talk 3 days from now. And the next month, the first Monday, we'll do another class similar to this one. Yeah, I've already picked those. Okay, thank you very much for attending.
Thank you. 谢谢。
OK，谢谢。
谢谢老师。
谢谢老师，谢谢。
拜。
Bye。
OK，再见。
再见。
再见。
谢谢舅，你声音听起来好多了 ，OK 了嘛？哦，都恢复了。